Beats in Life, Fifth Element Live. The elements of hip hop are DJing, graffiti, breaking, knowledge, and
your mama.
Biddy, did you come here to play or did you come here to finesse?
We can't all get a pair of socks?
I told you, Patrick, I was coming for you. I took you out.
You're still whack, copy.
What's going on, world? It's yours truly, Mazi Mutafa, here for the second episode of No New Leaders. And I'm super excited to have my co-host back with me, Dr. Jason Nichols. What's going on, Jay?
Ain't nothing going on but the rent, man. I can't call it. How you?
I'm great. I had a great radio show last night with another co-host, Dr. Jason Nichols, and Carrie, who was here last week on WPFW 89.3 FM here in Washington, D.C., talking about lots of different things. And I'm really enjoying this kind of phase in my own professional development where I can spend as much time working as talking about work and kind of what's guiding that work. With that, we've got a good friend of mine here from Athens, Georgia, Life, who I'm going to bring on in a second. But before I do that, let me do two things. Let me go ahead and read his bio. Then I want to play a video about the organization that he runs and its signature event. So Life is the founder and executive director of Chess and Community, Inc., a nonprofit dedicated to developing young leaders and critical thinkers in Northeast Georgia. Known in the community that he serves as Life, that's his performance name. He fuses chess and his he fuses chess with conventional therapeutic methods to curb impulsive behavior among youth with delinquent past. He is the subject of a documentary called Life the Griot from 2014, highlighting the work that he's accomplished in Athens, Georgia, and the surrounding areas. Life was also one of Athens' exceptional community leaders in 2013, and his organization has been featured in Georgia Magazine. In 2015, he was the recipient of the President's Fulfilling the Dream Award. Life is also presented at TEDx UGA. He's been featured on Georgia Public Broadcasting, on Second Thought PBS NewsHour, and CBS News. He is the recipient of the 2016 Daily Point of Light Award and was recently recognized as an Atlanta Braves community hero. He's the author of 2 books, Tree of Life, The Human Ascension, and Hidden Ripples, Life's Unspoken Language. He's an instructor in the School of Social Work at the University of Georgia. And much like you and I, Jason, he hosts a radio program on WXAG 92.7 FM. His segment, Shifting Perspectives, focuses on exploring community solutions to complex problems in Northeast Georgia. I got to tell you, I've been introducing people for a long time. I never read anybody's bio. Until I read that bio, I was like, yo, not only is this brother a founder, a leader, he's an author, a professor. He's got a lot of titles. Life, thank you so much for joining us.
What's going on? Always good to see you again, Brother Mazi, and always good to see you, Brother Jason. I like to say I wear many locks, right? But I'm just amongst many of you all. We got to wear many hats in all the work we do.
No doubt.
And it's been a pleasure, I must say, to have Mazi on the show many moons ago. You remember that, Mazi? You came down.
Remember?
Yeah.
I remember. I was going to tell you, my wife and I are coming down the week of the 18th. We're going to be in Atlanta for a week on vacation. My father just moved to Atlanta, so we're coming down to visit him, and I was going to reach out.
Oh, come on. You know, you're always welcome. I might even swing out there to Atlanta to see you. Atlanta's only about an hour away from here.
No doubt. Well, let's do this, because I know it's always great to set context. I did the bio, but I forgot to actually play the video. So let's go and play this video.
Sure.
That features your work for folks to get a sense of what you're doing. Hopefully the connection is strong. My Wi-Fi at home isn't great.
You only start off life with 2 things. The first thing is the breath that you have. But the second thing you get is your family. The question is, what do you do with that family? thing money gets you is the ability to get things done, what you want done. The power of family is getting those same things done without money. It takes time. You've got to make time for it. Family makes you powerful.
Right.
All right. So I know that the audio was okay. Life, do you want to reiterate some of the things? We saw images of young people playing chess with speakers and
Yeah. So what you saw there was our annual chess conference, and this is our ninth annual. Actually, it's supposed to be 10 years, but this is our ninth. You know, COVID kind of threw a couple of things off. And at this conference, we have young. It's a chess tournament. We have a robotics tournament. We invite different speakers. We had a whole virtual reality center. And this is a way to really just bring this community together. We offer scholarships and really just kind of have the young people lead those conferences, lead the speaking gigs and engagements. And this is just a way to bring people together, man, and really start talking about real issues that are going on down here, but really from a young person's perspective, right? So what you saw was just 10 years. You saw law enforcement in there. We have something called Justice Serve, where the kids be busting down the police officers on the chessboard. And all that is designed to really, let's start looking at all the different components of our community, and let's find a way to fuse it together in a way where we can have real dialogue, but most important, allow kids to kind of engage. And we invite different business leaders and different the tech companies and workforce development, as well as economic development sectors of this city, to allow them to see what the next generation of kids are really bringing to the table, and how do we create realistic and real pipelines that can feed kids into a lot of these things. And a lot of that really grew off from, you know, asking the question, do we have a gang problem or do we have a youth development problem in our city? And I think we're starting to see that in not just our city, but in all the cities across the country, man. And we wanted to really ask this real question and put ideas in the hands of the youth to try to solve them. Like if you had $77 million, instead of using that to build a jail, how would you use that to enhance and better your community and allow them and teach them and get them into the whole systems thinking approach? So I went around my elbow to get to where I need to go, but I got there.
No doubt. Well, I thought this would be a great second show as a follow-up for a whole range of reasons, including the fact that chess is described as a game of kings and princes. So we talk about leadership in an ancient sense, like those were the leaders. But one of the things I wanted for us to play chess as a part of this conversation, a little bit of technical difficulties. I'm gonna bring you back just to play chess online, so people can watch you teach me a lesson.
Oh, don't put blood. I won't put blood on the board.
Huh?
Go ahead. I said I don't want to put blood on the board. I'm just talking mess. That's all.
Well, why don't we talk a little bit about the pieces, right?
Yeah.
It's always interesting when we introduce chess to young people. They're always like, "Oh, it's so complicated. Oh, it's so difficult." And it's like, no, it's kind of like life. There are context clues that tell you how pieces operate, right?
Yeah.
So, like literally, the pawns are shorter in stature than everything else on the board. They have the least amount of value numerically when they're captured. They are the piece that there's the most of them. So again, it diminishes their value because there's lots of them. Versus a rook. What is a rook? Why don't we run through the pieces? What they are and what they do.
So I think, you know, I'm gonna take a step back. When I did the TEDx, the whole TED talk, it was about really reimagining how we not only understand chess and look at the board, because a lot of times there's a stigma. If you play chess, that means you're amongst the elite of the elite. You're an intellectual, right? But the reality is there's a lot of people that are playing chess, a lot of masters and grandmasters that are living under bridges, right? So the idea of chess alone is not really the issue. It's how do we apply chess into the day-to-day and have kids see the use of chess. So when I'm talking about chess, I'm talking about it from that systems thinking approach. How these pieces are systems that exist within your community, right? And systems create products, right? So let's understand how systems in your community move. When we look at the rook, we try to bring it from a micro what's happening in your neighborhoods, in your communities, on your block, your immediate family structures and, the immediate things that you're engaged with. And then the macro, what's going on with the policies, what's going on with the institutions around and how those institutions, move to create issues or to resolve issues in the communities, regardless of how we see it. So when I teach chess, we teach it from that systems thinking approach. And one thing is, of course, from the micro, we always try to introduce the pawn as you. This is you, and you have an ability to graduate and go into the next step. You have the ability to graduate into any one of these institutions or even get into entrepreneurship, create your own joints, right? The castles. We look at the castles as a community. We say, yo, you got to keep your community straight, right? Castles move straight. Keep your communities tight. The bishops, what type of internal, I would say, protection mechanisms that we have to protect our own communities? If not, then we're going to rely on outside entities to come in and patrol and engage our communities. So where's that warrior structure? Where's that community security that we have inside? The bishops, let's look at the churches. What role does these churches or these other religious institutions that are eating off these communities, right? But what role do they actually play? And how do we kind of fuse and begin to work with them in ways and where it can be beneficial to all, not just the 100, the 200, the 50 people that attend that church, but how do we use that structures and put all the churches, put their banks, the money together into one bank and use those banks to actually create, get a Subway, get one of these fast food chains, in where we can actually begin to employ kids within that church, right? Instead of us having to look outside for somebody else to employ our children, right? So what roles does the church play? Of course, the queen, the moms, right? Like, what's the role? How does the queen move? How's moms moving at home? What's the relationship between your moms and you? And the king, in some aspects, represents your dad. And those pieces can flip when we're talking about, the young sister that I'm teaching versus the young brother. From the macro, it changes the game, right? Once they understand how it works on a micro level, the immediate, and we see that some kids got the ability to start thinking deeper about systems thinking and how systems around them work, then we get into the banking system, right? The castle is your banking system, right? Let's look at your money, keep your money straight, right? The knight representing the military and the military structures of how they control, right? How they control world movements, who got the biggest guns, weapon contracts are always doing well. What roles do these churches, when you talk about massive church structures like the Catholic Church or other, not just with the church, we're also looking at the different mosques, different synagogues, and different groups that runs world diamond industries and different structures. And then we're looking at the kings or the queens, as far as, different politicians, different presidents, and those pawns become pretty much those, people that are used by these mega systems to control world structure, right? So the idea I always say is, like, we send the missionary in, right? The missionary is there to teach you to believe, right? Because it's the whole idea of a beehive. Right. And the chess is looked at as the structure as a bee, how the missionary comes in to teach you to believe, right? And when, people chasing the missionaries out, then they bring the knight, the warriors, the military, and they're here to teach you to behave, right? And so it's just getting into how things and systems work and make it in a fun way. And oftentimes when you try to talk to kids about this, it becomes a lot. So the idea is simple. I tell the kids, you beat me, I'll give you $100. And they're like, all right, what's up? Let's go. They just get on the board, even if they don't know how to play. It's just a way to really get them onto the board. And then from there, we start with the pawns and we just play with them with the pawns until they get it. And then we start infusing other pieces on the board and allow them to see how it moves. And me coming from more of a therapeutic, counseling background, I'm able to see, like, those kids that start stuff. I'll be like, yo, you start stuff and you don't finish it, right? They're like, how you know? It's all in how you move, right? Those kids who start and they just no longer believe in themselves. So I try to use some of those elements to introduce sort of that thinking through chess.
I think it's brilliant for a whole range of reasons, including the fact that I think you affirm an idea that I have, which is the longer you stare at a thing, the more you see in it.
Yeah.
Because I know that, the way that I think about chess, and I was talking about this earlier, this idea that most times people think about chess as kind of a metaphor for war. There's these two kingdoms that are battling each other. But I think we're starting to talk about it as a metaphor for business. It's about talent management. And the king's role is the CEO, that he, she, or they are doing the work to figure out who does things best. But it's interesting, the more I listen to people who teach chess, the way they see different symbols in the individual pieces. So for people that don't know, the knight, as an example, is the only piece on the board that can jump over other pieces and moves in the shape of an L. I listened to someone teaching young people about the knight recently. He described the knight as the police because they are above the law. They're literally the only piece on the board that can break the laws of chess, which is every other piece can move in different directions, but they have to be unimpeded. The knight is the only piece that can jump over pieces to get to where it's going.
And I like that, even with the L, right? That's the law. That's the law aspect to it. And that's one of the things when you see us engage with police officers, that's that knight program that we develop, where let's begin to understand those structures that police and engage our communities, right? And with the knight, we always say, sometimes you got to take 2 steps back to move forward, right? Because once they mastered the knight, then it becomes easier to really engage and have them to see the rest of the systems, because it's unorthodox the way it moves, right? It moves in a strange way. Like, man, where's the knight going? Right. Whereas a bishop, he can easily become unemployed. You just stand on the other color, opposite color. The bishop ain't got no more work, right? Whereas the knight can still put that work on you. So, but continue. I'm sorry about that.
But even the idea that the bishop, when the way that the board is set up, it goes from the outside in. It goes rook, which is the tower, to the knight, to the bishop, to the queen, to the king, right? But so the idea that religion is always closest to power. That on both sides of the king and the queen, they're flanked by bishops. So thinking about, well, so what's the role of religion in a larger society, religious institutions? Part of that answer is what you were describing with that missionary model of, going in, be leaving, be coming, etc. But also having influence on behalf of larger powers. And so thinking about, I think it's a beautiful metaphor for young people, especially because one of the things that is true more often than it should be is that we put our children into systems that we don't encourage them to understand. Not even question, but to understand. What's the leadership? Like, if you ask the average kid going to a class, what's the leadership structure of this school? They're like, the leadership structure. What do you mean?
That, man, you're on point. You're on point, and that's exactly how we're coming at this. When we go to mayors and commissioners meetings, right, or city hall, or if those meetings, it happens a couple of times a month, and the one thing is like the politics. We call it politics 101. You need to figure out who the city manager is or who's the county manager. Kid be like, yo, I run the city. I'd be like, you run the city? All right, let me show you who the city manager is. Right? Let me show you what he's doing, right? And how the city manager has to manage some of these systems. So we start with understanding the org structures. Who hires and fires the police chief? The city manager. Who hires and fires the city manager? Right? The mayor and the commissioners. Who hires and fires the mayors and commissioners? It all shows that you're on top of that leadership structure versus how we've been programmed to believe that we're on the bottom. And once those kids understand how it moves, what district you live in, how does those district work? Who's the commissioner that runs that district? So when they get to understand the structures and how it works, then it becomes easier to start looking at the city from a systems thinking perspective versus I ain't got no power. I'm just trying to figure out how to survive and how to move and not knowing where and how to move.
So I have a question, Life, and that is, you come from a counseling background, and my question is, how do you think that chess can bring these kids self-awareness? Because I think, you talked about recognizing systems and recognizing what's around them, but some of these issues I'm sure start internally. So I'm wondering, how does chess give a person, particularly a young person, but any person, self-awareness?
For me, it's more of motivation, right? Because oftentimes when we ask the kid, they like, man, I ain't trying to play this game. This game's for nerds, and it's for, So the whole thing is more, one, how do you think, right? And how do you start looking at processes and things around you, not just from systems, even your internal family systems, even things that are going on in your home, right? So like I always said, Chess alone is not going to solve the problem, right? We have one part of our program called Collective Hands, and that's focused on that root culture. Who are you? How did you get it? What are you here for? What's the purpose? What the family systems look like? And how do you understand yourself through your family structures? Understanding who grandma was, who grandpa was, whether it was positive or negative, trying to figure out who they was and get an idea of what role they played in the family systems in their lives, and what are some of the characteristics within them, as well as what are some of the characteristics within you. So when I'm using chess from that self-development, it's more from how do we boost awareness and confidence? How do we get kids to start looking at an issue that they're struggling with, be it identity, be it, trying to resolve some of the conflicts that we see internally as well as in the community. Let's start thinking about that and tease out how you're thinking through that process. So I'm not going to say, well, where there's a cultural element to chess, I could freestyle all day, right? But from a realistic point of view, it's how do I change? How do I help this child? Again, it's not like how I'm going to help you to teach. Like, we're not here for that. But how can I show you different ways of looking at an issue when you encounter it? That makes sense, King?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
I'm curious. Do you either have a favorite piece on the board, or in terms of its application to your life, or we can stick with that? Do you have a favorite?
I think I would go with, if I go with anything, it would be the knight, man, because the knight and not from a law enforcement. I'm to be clear, I'm no law enforcement or anything, but the knight is so unorthodox, man. And sometimes in life, you're going to have to move backwards, man. You're going to have to move. You're going to have to go sideways with things. You're going to have to attack. But for it to be effective, you got to be able to coordinate with others, right? Because the knight alone can't put you in checkmate, but the knight with somebody can really engage. So I like to, if I apply any piece to my life, it would be some of that knight, because I've taken a lot of steps back, right? I've taken a lot of steps forward, you know what I mean? And sometimes I had to fall back and let me reevaluate, and the knight challenges you to do that, right? You take a step back, reevaluate the board, say, all right, how I'm going to go at this. All right, let me go at this way. Who I need to talk to next? I need to talk to the police chief. I need to know who that person is. We got a new police chief coming in town. I need to figure out who that person is. Let me take him out to lunch. You know what I'm saying? To be strategic in how we move. We got a new city manager coming in. We got the economic sector. How do we develop? How do we merge the economic sector with youth development sectors? And who the two peoples we need to meet, and then make moves like that on the board. So from a community, I like the knight, but internally, I like to say I'm that king, man. Let me stop. But you know what it is. It's that king move, man. You got to be strategic. You got to be wise. You got to be grounded. You got to understand your purpose. You got to understand what you're here to do. And you got to be confident in what you do, and understand that you have pieces around you that's there to support, that's there to help you move forward. You know what I mean? And so I got a lot of pieces, but if I was to choose one, it would be the knight.
So when we play, just so you know, my favorite, like lots of people try to protect their queens, I'm protecting my knights. Not from the law enforcement, but from people just don't see it coming, because it has so many options. It looks at the same board, it plays by different rules. And so I feel like that's kind of my ethos. Like, I'm aware of the rules. I'm just going to break them in front of you.
No, it's okay. I appreciate the heads up. So I'm gonna have to really employ the bishops to start attacking the knights and take them out. You know what I mean?
So this is a discussion about leadership. Well, it's a discussion about kind of the roles that people play, right? So there are people who call themselves, and other people call them leaders. There are people that are managers. One of the beautiful things about starting off with your bio is that you're an author, a professor, a CEO, a chess player yourself, a father, which you didn't mention in your bio. But I always got to lift that up. A husband. So all these titles that you have, I wonder, when you think about a leader, what would you say are the attributes of a leader? Not necessarily a manager or those other topics, but like, when you think a leader, this is what a leader is.
And one thing I could say, I really appreciate the first discussion you had last week, right? For the first podcast, because I would say I did come in it with a thought process, right? Because I don't consider myself a leader, right? But others be like, man, you leader, you take the lead. The leader, you know, the imam, right, is the one that is in charge, that pretty much has to lay the foundation out, lay the structure, and help guide people into their position. A leader should always be in a position to find a way to replace himself, right? Or find a way to develop the next generation or the next person to go forward. When I think of leadership, I think of more from a guidance, right? Because I think the word leadership is often like it's thrown around like a lot. Like he's a leader. And at this point, are the influencers the leaders in our communities? Are the rappers the leaders in our communities? Are the politicians the leaders in our communities? Are the nonprofit wings the leaders? And we have a society that associate, in some cases, leadership with money. We want to know what the millionaires are reading, right? So that we can accumulate what they have, or the billionaires, because leadership is really and always associated with power and not a force, right? Because a lot of people don't rock with police, they don't rock with different forceful elements within their communities, but a sense of power where you helping a person next to you recognize their own power so that they can make better choices in leading, be it their households, their business, their communities, themselves, right? So for me, I think leadership is tightly associated with power in some aspect, but more from a guidance, here to try to guide. And because you got charismatic leaders, you got thought leaders, you got leaders that's just, I'm here to just develop the strategy, and now somebody else got to manage it and run it, right? So when I think of leaders, it's like the question we ask ourselves when we're playing chess, right? Who's the leader of the chessboard, right? Is it the king? Is it the queen? No, it's the person that's moving the pieces, right? That's the person that's guiding the structure. Now you can lead with certain pieces, but that don't make those things leaders. When you look at a ball game, right? Who's the leader on that basketball court? You might say, well, LeBron is the leader. He's the one that's leading his team, but he got to take instructions from the coach. And every now and then he see that the wrong play is being called. He got to take, but then who the coach got to answer to? You got the GM, you got the general managers, right? So who leads? Who's leading in all of this? So it's multiple facets and multiple ways of understanding leadership. But I think for me is a leader should be able to inspire another person to be better at what they do, and help guide them into the next steps and to next layer of who they are. So I might say, yo, I got spiritual leaders that I rock with, cats that I listen to that inspires me, that helps me want to do better. I won't ask them for financial advice, right? I won't ask them for other aspects, but they may be connected to my spiritual development, my spiritual growth. I might say, yo, my uncle is one of the leaders in my life that's helping to make me better, that's helping to guide me into a different direction. So I think when I look at leadership, I look at it more from the lens of guidance, empowerment. Like, I'm gonna empower you to take yourself to the next level, so that way you don't need me at all to move forward.
Say word.
Word. Inside.
So you talked about being a thought leader. Jay, feel free to jump in when you want. But you talked about being a thought leader. Can we talk about what prompted you to combine chess and robotics?
I would say, believe it or not, it really came from the pandemic, right? When things was really popping off with the pandemic, we're such a physical organization. Like, we meet, the kids meet, we feed them, we do all kinds of different engagement in these large groups. And a lot of parents were saying, man, we got these kids at home, they're bored. We would try things online. Kids would just put their cameras on mute, and you know what I mean? They don't be engaged. They can't rock through this computer, but they still on the video games. They still on these other aspects. So we started shifting more into, okay, let's get into more of the coding. Let me show you, since y'all like video games, let me develop programs that teach you how to create those video games online. And then from there, it's like, now let's really fuse this robotics, because we were recognizing what issues we have in our community. You know, we have one aspect of young people or people in the community saying, I can't find jobs to save my ass, right? It's no jobs out here. And then you got employers on the other end saying, yo, we got all these jobs and nobody's showing up, right? So clearly there's a miscommunication, or people are not communicating. And then the other aspect will now begin to fuse and show a lot of youth the opportunities that they have through the job sector, and where the technology is going. You know what I mean? With the coding, with some of the DJI products that we're using, with robotics, with the engineering mindset. And a lot of our kids naturally have that. They work with their hands, they work in these spaces. Chess is really there to get them to start thinking more critically. So we look at it, we say chess through critical thinking and problem solving through robotics. The robotic is the problem solving element. And more than just building robots, we always, the program focuses on this group. We've been programmed to self-destruct. So this group dynamics, we can't rock with each other. So everything we do, even through the chess tournaments, the chess boards, is teams of 3 that represents one mind. It's groups that has to work to get through this chessboard. It's groups that have to work together to get to build these robots. So fusing it came from the pandemic and recognizing that, we can really we have an opportunity to have these kids work in small groups to build their robots, and then bring in a big group together and allow them to just kind of compete. So the idea was, okay, how do we make it different, right? It's a lot of people to play chess, and it's a lot of robotic programs. So our thing was, well, we're going to program these robots, and we're going to use these robots to move chess pieces. And that's how that's what it was a way to really fuse the two, critical thinking and problem solving. And the third wing to that is debates, conflict resolution, right? So critical thinking, problem solving, and conflict resolution. Those are the 3 elements that we focus on.
And before Jason jumps in, how did you develop those 3 wings as the elements of the program? Because I can't imagine, this is a question for people that are starting programs. I can't imagine, unless you're just really a super genius, that those have been the 3 from the very beginning. So how do those things evolve over time?
It's not. I would say like this: anybody that does this work, I think we're all the natural geniuses, right? We all got ideas and things that we want to do and programs that we want to create. And I think the problem is, damn, where do I start? And how do I start? So in the beginning, we just really started with chess. And the chess was more of the critical thinking as a way to really address a lot of the violence that we were seeing in our communities, right? Kids was walking right into traps. So it was like, man, you got to think before you move. You got to stop walking into these traps, right? So we started with chess. And then I would say every 6 months to a year, we will begin to infuse other things. Now we're going to get the public speaking. And from the public speaking, we're going to get into the debates, right? So the kids started getting into debates. Now we just finished our book club. We read the book, Things Fall Apart, right? Now we're going to infuse the book club. That's monthly, not monthly, excuse me, during the summers. We have our book clubs that we rock, 3 books over the summer. Then we're going to infuse some of these elements. So I started to slowly infuse these elements, but with the concept of what are the 3 to 5 things that we see is a crucial issue in our communities, from where our young people have to struggle with. How do we create systems and pipelines where we can feed them into this, right? So if we know that a lot of kids going to college, but by the first 2 years, they out. They ain't, they haven't managed structures. They don't know how to engage with people. So we're going to focus the debate, and we're going to bring it on college campus and let our kids debate with college students. Right. If we know that the robotics and the engineering minds is something, so we're going to figure out a way to fuse that into the work as a way to address and solve the problems. As you see now, like from the video, we get into virtual reality. So we're now merging our communities together through virtual reality. Kids will get on the virtual lens from Athens to Macon. We just popped off in Atlanta, and they put the goggles on, and they're going to play with each other and they debate with each other in that virtual space, right? So it's keeping it innovation, right? There's a lot of programs that are in place that says, we're going to get the kids for a week, put the kids through a week, 2-week program, give them a certificate, and we never see their black ass again. And we really believe that we've made an impact. And maybe we did. We planted a seed. But the work we do is we're going to grab them from middle school, and we're going to work with you until you graduate from high school. And then once you graduate, you get a scholarship, right? But you got to come back into the community over the summer and run the debate program and run the book club and lead in some of the robotic stuff. So it's that mindset of seeing the need, seeing how the first set of kids go out and what are some things they struggled with, and how things around us are changing. AI is taking over. We got drones and all kinds of things that we're fusing, 3D printers that we're fusing into these programs, and develop a pipeline with UGA, University of Georgia, through one of the tier systems that we have. So it's learning the institutions around you, developing your program, and sticking it to these different pipelines. What are the different 5 top employers, 10 employees in the city you're saying they need? They need this. They need people that with critical thinking. They need this. And so let me fuse that into the work that we do. So that way, if a kid, we can at least get some middle class or even some, some money coming through some of these families, because we're dealing with, 8 to 11 generations of poverty in this city. So how do we begin to really break that, and how do we address that from a systems thinking kind of mindset, and how do we kind of fuse resources into the areas that we see needed? So immediately see the need, see all the kids getting trapped in the juvenile system. What were some of the top problems? All right, then how do we start looking at programming that we do to address elements of that, but at the same time, keeping it fun, right? Keeping it engaging, developing point systems where the kids want to come, because if they win, they get to go to DC to, like we used to do every year, come out to your organization and, play chess and go visit the Mall of DC and eat at all these restaurants, get to the hotel. Those are incentives that the kids got to earn that. So they earn that through these point systems that we've created. And those point systems are set by the chess pieces. The castle represents community. So that's community service. You got 50 points. The castle is worth 5 points, 50 points for every time you engage in this community service work. The bishop, so the knight, like we fuse all of these different pieces into some of these programs, and we use that as incentives to really give them points, and then they could win and they get different things at the end. So I went all the way around, but I wanted to give you a big picture of it. It didn't just happen overnight. We had to make plans. We had to think about it. We had to see what was next. And then we trying to find ways to fuse it. I got so much things that I want to do, but as you know, just limited resources, different things that we just we just don't have. So I got to take it a step at a time to make it work. I'm gonna get into the screen. There we go. So anyway, that's it.
So do you think that, or rather, are you being supported by the school system? Because a lot of what you're saying, it sounds like you're starting with these kids in middle school and you're kind of developing them to get into college and giving them the critical thinking skills. But for robotics and things like that, I'm assuming that there's probably some math skills and things like that, maybe I can tell you in some of the areas that I've been around, that a lot of the Black kids aren't getting a good foundation because sometimes the school leaders aren't forward thinking the way you are. What do you think you can do, or is there anything that you've done to engage some of these school leaders to set a good foundation for these kids before they get to you?
No, I agree. So I love that, because we put out, anything we doing, we got to collect data, right? We got to get an idea of, is what we doing effective, or we just smelling ourselves, right? So part of the work is we put out these surveys. How many robotics programs are in some of these schools, right? And then second, how many of our kids are even attending or know about the robotic programs that are in school? So when we're finished with what we're doing, part of the work is we're encouraging them to join some of the robotic structures and programs that's already involved in their schools. Now, of course, they may be using different systems. I don't think the innovation, a lot of times with anything, I could teach you about, eraser boards, and I got to find a way to make it fun, and I got to connect it with you in the culture and the language and in the way that you do it. So when we're training our team, to, we got to meet these kids in a way where we got to make this popping. So when you come to some of our events, look at some of our Instagram, we got music playing. It's dope. We got DJs in the background. So the kids are getting this kind of development, but from a way in where it's not like foreign. It's not, I can't do this. I'm looking around. There's none but white kids and Asian kids in here, and I'm the only Black kid. So I'm not just going to be a part of that. So the idea is like, nah, you smart enough. You can actually do this, and then bring in everything we do. We're inviting teachers. We had the superintendent. We do our competitions at the schools, and the teachers are sometimes shocked to say, how do you get this kid to actually do this? And it's like, nah, man, it's just the way we talk to him. And the kid stepped, yo, you give me some push-ups. He stepped out of line, give me some push-ups. So when the teacher tried to tell, give me push-ups, the kid looked at the teacher like, nigga, who you? Like, you don't talk to me that way because you haven't established that level of connection. You haven't established that cultural connection and that respect level. And we don't force it. We don't be like, you push-ups. We don't come like military, right? We come with love. And the kids know, yo, y'all step out of line. What are y'all agreeing that we want to do if y'all step out of line, right? Yeah, you got to get push-ups. So, yo, you got to give me 10. You got to give me 20, right? So we bring the teachers, and the teachers are seeing these kids, one, read these books, high school level books, and they're like, how do you get these middle schoolers to read it? It says they got it. They could think these kids are brilliant. It's just you're not engaging them in a way that they can connect. So we run across a word they don't understand. The question is, what does that word mean? And everybody looking at each other. So y'all mean y'all just gonna keep reading and nobody know what that word means, right? So it's challenging them. It's not me saying they stupid or we challenging them and taking it to that next level. So we try to show a method and a way of doing it, and where sometimes the teachers rock with, and other times it's just like, it's a little too personal. Like, because I can connect with the kid in a way, or my team connects with the kids in a way that just be who you are. If you like country music, then like country music and talk to the kid about country music. Don't try to come in there and pretend that you hip hop or you this. Nah, be who you are, and because kids can see through a lot of that. So anything we do, we fuse it, and some of our work is included in the schools as part of the after school programs. We bring in some of the robots things that we're using, and we're fusing the math elements in it. We're fusing all of the different important elements into what we're doing with robotics, because now the teachers and schools have recognized how impactful that what we're doing. So we say, look, we're not trying to battle the school. We want to work with you, because there's a lot of kids who know this stuff, but they ain't attending none of y'all school programs, right? So how do we develop pipelines and where we can actually start feeding them into some of these pipelines? But then on your side, you got to connect. We can't bring a kid in there and you don't know how to talk to the kid, and you start throwing some racial code words, and the kid be like, I ain't rocking with y'all. Y'all crazy, and leave. It's clear. Kids can see through that, right? So sometimes the teachers may mean well, but they just don't know how to rock. There's that cultural element that sometimes is disconnected. And it could be the same when I got like little white kids in my group, so little Latino kids in my group. We got to recognize, okay, let's figure out where they are at and how do we meet them where they're at, right? Because not all of them speak the same language. Not all of them listen to hip hop. Not all of them connect. And if I see that I can't connect, or we have people that can connect, we make sure we connect with people that's able to engage them. And it's like teaching a child from his or her learning style, right? Versus having a universal one and telling all the kids to learn, and then some kids just get left out. So with our kids teaching some of, the little Latino kids, our kids are teaching some of the little white kids, and vice versa. But using an element in where everybody can build with each other and allowing the school to see how it works.
So I'm curious, because remember I said the way that I'm thinking about chess these days is that it's really about business, it's about talent management. And you keep talking about your team. Tell us a little bit about your team, who they are, what it is they do, and then the kinds of investments that you, as the king of the board that you're running, are investing in developing their talent.
Okay, so it's a lot of different elements. We have, I try to get social workers. I teach in the school of social work, so we try to get a lot of interns in that space that helps us to recognize maybe some of the models that we may have been missing, right? When making a connection, it's just not working with the kid here, but also going to the schools, checking the kid in the school level. So one, we have a team of interns that we really work with, but the internal team, we're talking about human development. We're talking about different parents from the community that we put in charge of. When I say in charge, meaning they have to lead sort of the we call it like the community connection, or the parent support, and where they connect with the mothers and help the mothers, do, and parents do, cooking demos and doing yoga together and checking in monthly and having the parents engage in elements, because a lot of times we just focus on youth, and anybody that's just focusing on youth without incorporating the family structure, without incorporating the community structure, is completely missing the ball, right? So we have a representative who's focused on the parents' development, and she has a lot of experience with DJJ or DFACS, and she knows about some of the resources that exist in the community. What we try to do with the team is we got another brother who's a lawyer, you know what I mean? So he's on the team, he's the assistant director, he focuses on what are we missing, right? And we develop a structure where I'm always asking that, like, what are we missing? What did we not get? Does this process work? Why is it not working? We run into a lot of clogs, right? So it's like, man, how do we unclog this, right? What's the best way to do it? Or what's the best way to look at it? And recognizing that each element within the team has already a built-in strength, right? So we and I lean on them for that strength and helping them to guide that says, all right, help me run this. Like, I'm not here to say, yo, I got it all, I know it all. It's what do you think we're missing in here? How do we make this better? How do we incorporate this so we can challenge more? And that's what we do. So there's a level of training. We definitely meet, and we got to start looking at our org structure and what works. And we meet at least, you know what I mean, about twice a month as the working board or the working people that's on the ground to see what's happening, what's working, what's not working, how do we improve. And then we got the board structure that has to overlook what we're doing and helping us to understand how can we start to tap into other areas. So as far as from a training, it's a lot of them bring these elements, and we're big in bringing try to get like somebody from the outside to come in and sort of, you know, kind of evaluate, you know, and see, and not necessarily evaluate to say you should do this, and we're going to completely do it to meet them, but to at least give us, sometimes you're too close to the picture, you can't see it, right? So having an outside come in and helping us with some training and helping us to start looking at resource development and all these things differently, I think it helps to strengthen what it is that we do. So a lot of engagement we always do, like we go eat once a month, and we do even do that as a family. Like we take the families out once a month, and the kid of the month, he or she gets to choose what restaurant we go to, and we bring all the families together and we eat. So it's like a family and a community unit that we're building. And we do the same thing with our leadership teams. And of course, you can only do but so much, because in this work, you find yourself juggling this ball, that ball. You find yourself juggling a lot of things at once. But from that structure, we make time for, you want to go to a training. There's a training on this. There's a conference on this. Do you want to go learn? And we just send somebody and pay them. There's somebody on grant writing, send a person out there to learn it and come back and share with the team. So that's how we try to move forward.
I'm curious, the last time we had a really in-depth discussion about programming, you were just bringing on a grant writer. Mm-hmm. Where in terms of volunteers versus even contracted or interns, like what is the kind of makeup of your team at this point?
I would say we have the most is contractors. Mm-hmm. Like, so we let them know, look, can you give this much hours a month? Yeah, we can pay you for this much hours a month. Can you get that? And that person say, yeah, I'm able to do that. I can squeeze this, and they make it work. So the majority is contractors. Then after the contractors, we have a great deal of volunteers, and the volunteers is the ones that help with some of the smaller lifting with the social work students, and we can put them into more looking at different programs. Or we have a program at the library every Monday. Then we had to do 2 community centers. Then we had the boys and girls, and we had the school. So we put different people in these positions, and you might get an engineering student that's looking for a couple extra dollars, and we let them know, yo, we can give you this a month. Is that something you can do? Right? You're making 20, 25 an hour, but you got to be on point with your time and this and that. So the structure is more still contractors and then volunteers.
That's beautiful. So you have access because you're in the School of Social Work. You actually, right? You're in the School of Social Work? Yeah. So that would mean that having people do internships with you, like you're a professional who's actually able to oversee them. So thinking about the role that academicians in the work that you want to do as a community organizer or leader could play, just to play an oversight role to give the potential interns the kind of credits, the kind of oversight they need in order for it to really be in line with their degree.
Indeed. So I would say, how does that look if an intern is more interested in more macro work? So we said, okay, look, let's get into some of that grant writing. Let's get into recognizing some of what's happening, going to the mayors and mission commissioners that's focusing on youth development budgets, and they help us understand some of the things that are going on. How does housing play a role in all the things that we're dealing with? How many families that we know that are in need of extra food assistance? All right, let's connect them to food banks, to where we see that there's community drives and food drives, parents that need extra assistance with rent and things. So on top of just playing chess, there's a social work element, or there is a life element to it, where people just in need, man. People, we run to that child that is like really going through it, contemplating suicide or anything of that nature, then we have partnerships with counseling firms that we're able to really pair them to. So having those social workers in place to really key in with that. How this kids doing in school? So when we have an after school, our program every Monday, we do robotics, chess, and coding at the library, but we got kids that still need help with this homework and that homework. So we now reach out, the intern or volunteers part is to reach out to trying to get tutors that can assist with one-on-one with that. So really, again, systems thinking, recognizing how the systems around you work, and then recognizing how do we now begin to, make those systems work for those kids that are within it. And even if it doesn't, allowing us, giving our social worker the experience more one-on-one. Some of social workers, I'm like that one-on-one. I like to just engage the kid one-on-one versus, all right, so you get more into the one-on-one dynamics, put them on the ground. And then next semester, now I want you to learn a little bit of grant writing. So connect them with the grant writer. And grant writer put them in place where they can learn. So give them that skill set. And at once a month, let's at least feed you, man. Let's go get to the Ethiopian restaurant, man. Let's go somewhere we can eat good, man. At least, you know what I mean? So you can feel the family structure that we've developed here. And then we got the boxing. We got the chess and boxing. Check hook. The kids are learning chess, and for the warriors, right? For all them kids that be just, wow, let's get them through this boxing program that we got going. We fuse boxing with chess. So it's a lot of elements to what it is that we do, and we identify the kids that we see really need it. Parents let us know this kid really needs some energy in this way. So we get that on the front end, and it's not like the program go into whatever you need. We just put the calendar out with all the things that we do. And the kids get to choose which one they want to come to. Those who come to all of them, they get points, right? So we got to have interns and contractors and all these people in place, from financial literacy to this, to that, to catch these kids and parents. And anything we do, we invite the parents. You can also be part of this, right? You can also be a part of what you're learning as well with your child. All right, I know I'm speaking fast, but yeah.
I'm pausing, waiting to see if Jason's going to jump in. But I'll go ahead and ask a different question, because at the beginning you said you don't think about yourself being a leader.
Yeah.
Well, I know I feel similarly, but I wonder why, especially describing all of the work that you're doing, all the systems connecting, all of the literally driving, the creation of innovative processes. Why is it that you wouldn't describe yourself as a leader?
Because I still need guidance, right? And I think being a leader is to recognize when you need guidance, right? And all of us need mentors and people in our lives that can help us, guide us in this way. And also feel like being a leader, it puts you in a space where you have to, with anything, you got to be responsible, right? So if anything happens, it falls on me, right? So I'd be like, nah, I'm not your leader. I'm not any of that, right? I'm just a person that really cares about what's going on, and I have a way of looking at it that we can maybe address that. So I look at leadership, and I think a lot of us, we're children of the 60s, of the 80s and 90s, right? And we come from the generation where we see the Dr. Kings and a lot of those more structures as leadership. So it's like, when you look at the Ben Amines from the religious communities, and the Yorks, and and these are some, especially being children of the 60s, or offsprings of the 60s. I grew up in the 70s, right? I was born in the 70s. So, and a lot of that time, our fathers and our parents come from spaces in where they fuse communities together. We had to move together through the Black Panther parties, through all these, especially coming in the New York era, all these different communities, and from you talk about Move in Philly, and it was a lot of those community structures that were sprouting all across the Northeast. And a lot of the children in the 70s was born into, I can't say a lot, but most of us was born into those structures. So when we see leader either from the religious, the charismatic, from the Dr. King, from Malcolm X, Shabazz Malik. We look at leaderships of Marcus Garvey's. We learn about all of that in our Pan-African development. So we think of leadership through those structures. Now in today, things have shifted, man. Our kids don't it's like our parents were looking for leaders, right? And I think a lot of us is like, yo, it needs to be done. We just gonna make it happen. Like, well, who's in charge here? If you find out who's in charge, then they could cut that head off. So why are we gonna put somebody else in charge? Let's just do what we need to do and start connecting with others who are doing it and learn from each other and sharing from each other. And this is one of the reasons why I brought my kids up to DC. Every time we bring the kids up to DC and meet y'all, man, they loving it. They learn about go-go music. They learn about and to see the work that you doing up there. And it's like, yo, we're not the only ones doing it. There's people all over. Look what's going on in New Orleans and Philly. There's people doing all of that, and they're doing it in their own way, but we don't control the social media, right? Look at our social media likes and pages. We still in 2,000-3,000s versus somebody that's just shaking it behind, or somebody that, you got 1.5 million, right? So we just know where the mindset is at and know people are where they're at. So we can't blame, well, this is where society's at, or maybe somebody's tapped into a marketing plan that I don't know about. But from the leadership, I don't consider myself a leader because I feel like there's still a lot that, I need to do better, right? And I think of leadership as really being on point. And I feel like I'm on point in a lot of ways. And others, man, I'm still trying to figure it out. So I don't want to be guiding anybody if I'm still trying to understand where I'm at, right? So that's why I was like, man, I'm not a leader, man. You know what I mean? I drink a liter of water on you, but I'm not a leader, you know what I mean? So I try to come from that space.
I know Jason about to jump in, but it's so funny listening to you. It becomes clear and clear every time we talk, like why the universe brought us together, why we do the work we do. Because I think that both of us, to the degree that we can, are just trying to be an example, and not an example like follow me, but an example of like understand what I did. So if you want to do something similar, you can.
You do it
Go
better.
Ahead,
Yeah. No. And I think a lot of that is, what you guys do, and the example that you're setting is one model for leadership. So I think one of the things that, you talked about this generation and being like, let's do it, let's not have a leader. I think about Black Lives Matter. They didn't have like central leadership. And I think that's part of the reason they fail. That's just my personal opinion. But then we look at, any structure. You mentioned like a basketball team. I think about like a football team. You have your offensive line. The center is the leader of the offensive line. And then you have your quarterback, who's the leader for the entire offense. Then you have your position coach, who's the leader for that position. And then you have, your head coach. Then you have your GM. Like, there are levels of leadership within a structure, and all of them generally has a manager or somebody, a leader, somebody that they answer to, that's set in a direction. So I think, you guys are humble guys. You guys started organizations that do a lot. I think the people within the organization look to your direction. I think the students that you mentor, they come back and they know that you guys set a direction and set a leadership precedent. And leadership doesn't always have to be perfect. I don't know of leadership that's ever been perfect. Dr. King, not Garvey. Or those movements wouldn't have ended, to be real about it. And I'm not criticizing those men, but not Malcolm, not Elijah Muhammad. They all had flaws within their leadership. And I think it's also, I do agree that it can be dangerous when you have one charismatic leader. That can be dangerous. So I agree with you there, but that's why you have a structure where everybody's ready to assume, at least the next level up within their leadership. Just like in the United States, you got the president, you got the vice president, and then you got the Speaker of the House. And then, it goes down through that line of succession. And that's what good leaders do and that's what you're doing, Life, when you said that you prepare students and you prepare people. For the future, so they can step up and be leaders within the community. And I think that's what leadership is about. So, you know, when we say that, when I say that you guys are leaders, it's not to pat y'all on the back. You know, I don't think y'all are that great. No, I'm kidding. Y'all do great things, but you know, it's not really to pat you on the back. Doesn't mean that you have to assume all this responsibility that you haven't already assumed. I think what you guys are doing right now is leadership.
Yeah, like I'm gonna let you chime in. I'm gonna let you chime in, then I'm gonna respond to Jay.
Okay, so I would add, I think one element of what we do is, because I'm always saying, man, to be honest with you, this is a lot, right? When you talk about running a nonprofit, when you talk about running your family, when you talk about, and anytime you go under any structure, right, you need to be clear on what are the rules, what are all the things that involve in that structure. So sometimes you come into this work with a level of passion, like, man, we just got to do this, and you don't understand systems thinking, and you don't understand structure in the way that you need to. Some people, you know, like you said, you build the plane while it's going. You know what I mean? Do you build the city first, or do you build the road first? Like what you do first. And I think a lot of times we move into some of this work with passion, and then realize, and for me, I can't say we, for me, I moved into this work with a passion, like, yo, we got to stop this. This is wilding, man. Who's doing something? No, man, let me just do this. Right. And not really understanding, well, look, this is structure. Like, I've been doing this work for 10 years before I became a nonprofit. And then when I became a nonprofit, then it became a little easier to say, all right, now let me see how we can get some support and some resources, then the board structure and this and all this element, and all that passion eventually is still there, because I'm always on the ground. So it's like, man, maybe I need to be a program director versus the ED, executive director, right? But the passion is still there, but you also realize that, look, you now find yourself trying to raise money and have to talk to people and smiling with people who ain't really smiling, and you can see all through that. And it's like, man, like, so my thing is developing the next generation to take it. You take it further. I'm just developing a skeleton, man. You go in there, take the program. It was whack. I didn't really learn much from this. This is how we can make it better. Take it. Run that program. So I'm trying to groom that next executive director to take it. I still got a lot of books that I want to write. I'm a poet. I love poetry. I still want to travel the world, do my poetry, man. I still got things that I enjoy that I can't, because it's like, you married to this work. And even if you want to, like, man, I just need to step back. Nah, you're responsible for a lot of people. Some people got to eat. Some people, kids, call it. And it's like, so it becomes a lot. And I would add with the whole Black Lives Matter structure, it's like, I believe one of the problems that we always do that messes us up is we allow someone else to define who we consider leaders. Right. And I think that's one of and again, the reality is, you know, whereas back in the days, they would just do boycott marches and they would shut down things. Now the beast has went universal, right? International. So you can shut down something in DC, man, they still got corporations popping in other cities. So it's like, it may get hurt a little bit, but it ain't really hurting nobody. Right. So how do you develop a movement that can really, mobilize and cripple and allow this, and number one, allowing this person to look at you as a human. I just gave my power up, right? Allowing society that's been programmed to do what they do, and we can get into, I don't want to go too deep down that line, but the idea with the whole Black Lives Matter, it's like that whole leadership structure, yeah, it fell apart because there's not a central leader, but having that central leadership, like what's popping in Oakland may be different than what's popping up in Atlanta and other places. So how do we kind of have this communication and where it don't have to be on a national stage where everybody needs to look at us, because that's how they can slowly put us apart. You know what I mean? So it's, how do we maintain the structures that we're doing locally and start connecting with others? But then when it comes to what's our national agenda, why it gotta be a national agenda? There are people that are for abortion. There are people that are anti-abortion within our communities. There are people that's for this, and there's people that's for that within our communities, within our cities, within the same church, within the same home, right? So it's us trying to develop a national voice for something that it just becomes chaotic in so many ways. And I think a lot of people now are just saying, look, let me just do what I can do in my city and try to make it better for the next generation that's coming after us. Sorry to give you that long answer, Jason.
No, that's great.
That was a good answer. So just a peek behind the curtain after last week's show. Jason asked me, Mozzie, is this really a discussion about semantics? Like, is there really a big difference between these people you're calling managers and people I'm calling leaders? And my response was, there is a difference. And Carrie started to unearth some of that in the last show. And we're going to continue to do that. It's not just semantics. It's not just humility. It is really understanding that there are different approaches, perspectives to what's necessary, and who should be called what. Yeah. Speaking of which, for the first time in our 20-year history, next month, Words Beats in Life is going to be acknowledging and commemorating Black August. And what is Black August? It is a kind of month-long rededication of yourself to the study of Black radical traditions. Just to put it plainly. And that comes in the form of watching documentaries or reading books or getting out and doing something. But it also includes things like fasting from sunup to sundown, this idea of self-care and denying yourself, because it's a tradition, it's a commemorative period that comes out of the prisons, out of recognizing the life and legacy of particular political prisoners, among whom are folks like George Jackson. So one of the things I'm going to be doing between now and next week is I'm going to be reading Blood in Your Eye by George Jackson. And this will be part of what I'll be doing. I'm also going to be fasting this week. And so for folks that are looking, I want to encourage you, Google Black August. Yeah. Learn something about some political prisoners. Those are leaders. Those are organizers. Those are managers who were incarcerated for doing the work that was seen as a threat, either because it literally was a threat or because it was just perceived to be a threat by a larger power structure. So I just want to encourage you all to read about the people that aren't the sanctioned leaders and organizers and managers from the past, some of whom are still alive, some of whom are still incarcerated, to learn about like what's being done to try to get them out of jail. With that being said, Life, I want to thank you for joining us this week. Jason, I want to thank you once again for contributing mightily to this conversation. Life, I want to play a game of chess, and I'm going to pay extra close attention to protecting my knights as I gave you my secret.
Oh, yeah. I'm coming for your knights, brother. Coming for your knights.
Can we give out your contact information? Because many of the people who might be watching this might be in DC, like, oh wow, this program is amazing. Hold up, where is it?
Yeah, you know what? We actually shout out to my brother Biko, man. So we're working on a wing out of DC. That my boy Biko is slowly, he does this whole chess with cigars, and so he's using some of the, so we're working, but the website is www.chessandcommunity.org. right? Chess and Community. And you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all of that stuff. So Chess and Community, Twitter, and you'll see it. You just look for that logo and that's us. And, I just encourage everybody, man. I'm not the puzzle. I'm a small piece of it. And being a leader is recognizing that, man, look, I'm a piece of this puzzle. I'm not the puzzle, right? And what role do I play in it? And how do I be the best at my role, right? So respect to you, Mozzie, man. Again, a lot of your work inspired me coming up there to DC, man, looking at the great work y'all doing, man, and just continue to do what you do up there, King. And Brother Jason, man, looking forward to one day meeting you and shake hands and, just build, man. So continue to do the good work, brothers and sisters. Everybody that's doing the work, keep doing it, man. Let's do our part, right? Just do our part.
No doubt. We'll catch you next week. Next week, we're going to be interviewing a good friend of mine, a frat brother who's based in Tennessee. He's running a Black Coders Guild. So speaking of life, talking about technology, this is another example of someone running an organization, introducing young people, particularly to coding and technology as a means to move forward. Jay, looking forward to seeing you next week, bro.
Absolutely. Much love.
Peace, y'all.
SP1200, the blue light bulb, to the board, the engineer's hands, and the limited well of patience. Hallelujah to everybody say ho, amen to all the ladies say ow. Thank God for make money, make money, and bless every hand that was ever put in the air. In your name, we pray.